Welcome back to Spitball Cards. In today's video, we're talking about youth participation in the sports card hobby and potentially the brand new players collection that PSA introduced. In this episode, you have me, Scott, we have Ty, we have Jeff, and we have Phil. Chris is not here, but he'll be back next week. Guys, we need to talk about the youth participation in the hobby. I wish there were stats on this, and maybe there are. Ask ChatGPT for all I know. But do we think the hobby is in a good place for the rising generation of collectors? It's changed a lot even since I was a kid back in the early 2000s. I was born in 95, so 2005 to 2010 is when I was really collecting, 10 to 15 years old. And I was happy getting a single pack from Target or from Winco, wherever my mom went shopping, and getting a base card of Paul Pierce. I remember that vividly. It was such a cool card. And now I don't think that type of hobby exists anymore. I went in and I put every Paul Pierce, every Yao Ming, every single John Stockton card into a binder. That's not how it is. So are we in a tough spot for kids, or do you think we're okay? Ty, I'll let you lead off as the man who has 85 kids and the man who works at a sports card shop.
Only 5, but yes, I do work at a shop, and I'll actually start with Culture Collision, where I was this last Friday, and I actually did a video that'll come out, I don't know, in a couple of weeks on the Market Movers channel, where I was talking to kids about what do they like about card shows, which is a pretty good barometer for those kids who were able to elucidate more than like a couple of words. But I was asking them, why do you like to be here? And got some really good answers from some kids, especially one in particular who was there with his dad and who in a very sincere way and very maturely was like, well, the main reason I like going to card shows is because I get to spend time with my dad, which was really cool. Kind of one of those little touching moments. And hopefully my kids would say that too. And then the flip side of that was there was a group of kids, and I'm not saying I'm not saying this disparagingly. This is like the reality of it. And they were like, I like going to card shows because I can make money. And there's an aspect of that. And that's the overarching dichotomy is like, there are kids who would just really like collecting. When I go to trade night at Cards HQ, or I just walk out on the shop floor, there are a lot of kids who are just really proud of their Atlanta Braves collection. They're like, I like collecting Braves cards. What are you looking for? Braves. And a lot of them do trades with Jeff too, Jeff Wilson. During like the trade night, they do like trade night live on YouTube. And Jeff basically just like trades whatever people want to. He has like an entire showcase or two of stuff that he's willing to like make deals on to make other people's, kind of day happy. And a lot of kids, they're there and they're doing trades for like their favorite players, their favorite teams. But then there is like a flip side of it that's more into like trying to profit, trying to trade up, trying to flip, trying to do those things. I don't disparage that. I know a lot of people have like a negative attitude of it. If I had been a kid now, instead of in the 90s, with all this access to data and to grading and to more like to selling online, I'm 100% certain I would have been like very into that game, like into the flipping game. Because in the 90s, I was like poring over the Beckett price guide and like keeping track in like a journal, like a notebook of like what my cards were worth and wanting to like, build the value of my collection over time. I used to think back in the 90s, like, oh man, when I'm 40, my cards are going to be worth something. Like, but I also enjoyed having a collection. So it's like there's two ways. I'm kind of like squarely in the middle still to this day. There are definitely kids who are just like seeing it as a vehicle to maybe save up enough money to like buy their first car when they're 16. And then the other end of the spectrum is just kids who are like really into the collecting aspect of it and just having their favorite players and other things.
My problem with being a kid and collecting the team I liked is I was a Jazz fan.
Mm-hmm.
So besides John Stockton, I have a lot of Morris Almond cards and Costa Koufos and Darren Williams and Carlos Boozer. That's always a name.
Oster tags though.
No Oster tags. I didn't like Oster tag. I liked Wesley Matthews. That's the era I was watching. So, anyways,
Ryan Russell, Jeff Hornacek.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No D Wills.
Oh, Darren Williams. I still have Darren Williams cards on my wall. Actually, they're game worn jersey cards. I thought those were the coolest things as a kid. I had so many game worn jersey cards of so many players.
That was all the 2000s for sure.
Yeah, now they're not worth anything. It's crazy. Phil, what do you think of youth participation in the sports card hobby?
Well, I will first say I have to make this statement because I think it's really important. Kids are getting invaluable experience in this hobby. The ones that are reselling cards, that are at trade nights, trade shows,
Yeah.
card shows, haggling, dealing. Like what they're learning is very strong entrepreneurial skills, having a P&L, building and retaining customers, negotiation tactics, soft skills, but also like cash flow management, and again, like profitability, profit analysis, like when to execute on deals. A lot of this stuff is very translatable to another vertical. So it's likely to help them later in life. And a lot of these kids, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, some of them I know are already better businessmen than I will ever be. Some of this is maybe within, they've got a gene that I'm missing. And some of it is what they've learned and how committed they are to doing what they're doing, right? They do have, a lot of them have time on their side to be able to, you know, go to some of these shows that I can't go to any longer. But at some point, they'll be well set up in the future for whatever they do next. Flipping, I don't know, stamps, pottery. I don't know what they do next. But again, it's not just the reselling aspect, but it's also like your own business, entrepreneurial stuff, especially when we're in a world that AI is going to shake up sooner rather than later. It's already started to. Those are the types of skills that you need to be as resistant against AI as possible. Entrepreneurial skills, soft skills, being able to sell, all great. So then I wonder, you know, 20, 30 years from now, are these kids still going to be in sports cards, or are they going to move on to something else? They'll probably move on to something else. But I don't think you can discount why these kids have stayed. It's not like we had a massive bull market in 2023 or 2024 when a lot of these kids got started, right? So they've withstood already like a pretty crappy, maybe you want to call it a neutral environment, where prices were still falling, sliding on a lot of cards and players and such. I think, and this is something that was evident to me when I started to set up at shows in 2018, these dealers aren't just resellers that are trying to make a buck. These are sports fans. Same holds true for these kids. Most, I'd say 95%, care about the sports in which they're acquiring cards in, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, or some combination.
I'm going to cut you off. I think those
Go
kids care way more than adults care. I remember when I was a kid getting back to the Jazz, I watched every game. Right. I kept like score myself. So I agree with you 100% there.
In a way, that's what's kept, I wouldn't say all of us in it, but that's kept me interested in sports cards in times where maybe the market wasn't as hot. I think, you know, is this a children's hobby? If you look at the price of wax and stuff. So take away like all of those like resellers, and maybe that's just like one anecdote, a big one, but it's an anecdote, or that's like one side of the hobby for kids. Can they afford to actually open product? And I think what became pretty clear to all of us, if it wasn't already, in that video, in the few videos that we talked about the bubble potentially, or the really reflecting on the bull market and a lot of the high-end sale prices that broke records, a lot of people responded saying, it's not sustainable. Price of wax is too expensive. It's like, hold on. We're talking about single cards and not the price of wax. But it became pretty clear that they're talking about it from the wax being an affordable standpoint, because that's how they want to engage with the hobby. And if that's not there, then they're not in it for the singles, because that's not only is it core to them being interested, but like they don't want to. There is no hobby without that. If you take that away from them, there's no interest in holding on to these single cards of whoever. So if that's going to be something that we're going to use to keep people interested, prices aren't affordable to any of us right now. We don't open any wax, so you think they're really affordable to these kids. And sorry, like these kids they're not all walking around with $50,000 in their pocket. That's a minority. They're not all walking around with daddy's money. Most of them are in situations probably not too different than when we were 12, 13, 14 years old.
They're definitely not all walking around with that much money, but a portion of them are. And when I'm at Cards HQ, or if I go out at trade night, especially, there are more kids than I would expect opening boxes, and like not just like blasters from the showcases, but like hobby boxes, sometimes multiple hobby boxes. I look at a shop like Cards HQ that from Topps, I'm sure gets more allocation than a lot of like smaller shops, but like can't get enough allocation ever for anything that they need it for, to satiate demand. And some portion of that is like definitely kids like ripping with, their parents' money, like giving them to open boxes, or with their dads to rip boxes, to the point where if you extrapolate it across all the LCSs in the United States, I have to imagine the dynamic's the same at like every shop. Now there's a portion of it there's a big portion of it that goes into breaking, as we know, and those other things, but sometimes it actually surprises me. Like it's not the dynamic where it's like a fool me once, fool me twice. It's like they just have the money they can afford it. Like they can afford to be able to open that. And family income levels in some cities maybe, or have been rising overall. And it's an interesting dynamic. There's more of it going on than I would have thought. Like
if I see like a 12-year-old opening up a $2,000 box of cards, I will maybe make the incorrect assumption in my head that the money came from the parents.
Yeah.
This is not the kid's doing. If I see a kid walking around with the same age, walking around with a $2,000 card, I have maybe the incorrect assumption, or maybe it's accurate, that in some way that was related to that kid's hustle, and he made that happen. He traded up for that card.
Yeah.
Is kind of my thinking, but yeah.
Jeff, we are 11 minutes into this video, and I have yet to hear you speak, which is 11 minutes too long. What is your take?
Well, I've enjoyed listening to both these viewpoints. A couple things I want to highlight. Totally agree with Phil that the skills that the kids are learning in their flipping, reselling, their version of collecting, are skills we don't usually learn in school, especially in elementary school. And to reiterate some of the soft skills, the social skills that people are getting, and sometimes when you see these kids at a show, they're maybe not so good on the social skills, but they learn, and you see those are things that they're learning at a young age, how to deal with people. So I think that's huge. I think that's awesome. One thing that worries me is what we've talked about a little bit, is it just seems that the barrier to entry is so much higher for kids now. You can't just go buy a pack for 50 cents or $1. And I know my son, who's 8, loves cards. The thing he loves the most is to open packs. He understands that he's probably not going to get a $35 card when he opens a blaster. So he could buy that $35 card instead, but it's opening the packs that he really enjoys. So I wish that it was a little bit more accessible for kids like him. And they do have some products still, like Big League. He enjoys opening Big League, but for the most part, the cost of wax has gone really high. So for me, that's a little bit of a worry for people, that first level entry for the kids to get in, because I know that's something kids love. We still love opening wax once in a while. So I do have that concern, but I think that it's also an indication of what kids are interested in, and they like being online. They like working with people online, negotiating. They like playing some of the video games. Some of the sports video games are so complicated, in which they can build teams, and they get player cards and things like that. And I see a lot of kids, 8, 9, 10, playing those kind of games, and they're becoming really intimately aware of statistics and statistical analysis in sports, in baseball specifically, and that really helps them with collecting cards. So I like all the opportunities that kids have. And going to the West Coast Card Show, I saw a ton of kids there. I know, like Ty mentioned, they do have kids trade nights. I think when you guys were at the National, you talked about there was like a kids trade night there as well. So there are organizations within the hobby that are trying to keep kids involved and interested. So like I said, my one concern is just that barrier of pack ripping entry. I don't want to lose that, because so many kids love that.
One thing I will note that I've seen with a lot of kids is Pokemon. Pokemon, for a lot of people, is like their first love into trading cards, because it's so much more relatable than baseball, just because they're kids and they like Pokemon. Pokemon right now, I think, is actually in a better place from a pure collector perspective. I know there's values in Pokemon, but people collect specific characters a lot more than they do players in some ways. And plus, like, art matters in Pokemon more than anything in sports cards. And there's no parallels. So if you have a really good pull, which is totally possible in any type of retail pack, then that's the same as like a hobby box, right? So you can get luckier in Pokemon than you can in sports cards. So I think that's good. There's a lot of kids in Pokemon. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but it seems like there's just tons. And that's going to translate to adults in sports cards. That's how I got into sports cards. It's just a natural transition. You care less about animated characters and your friends are talking about football. And now you want to buy your first box of Prism. And the good thing is there's actually a lot of retail sports cards available right now. So that transition is possible. There's a lot more sports cards than Pokemon cards. It's funny now adults are kind of ruining Pokemon cards, if I'm being honest, for kids, which is unfortunate. Shout out Phil's Pokemon box. Woo! But with that being said,
I'm glad you brought that up, Scott, because Pokemon cards are in a much better place for kids. And part of the reason for that is there's just so many ways that you can engage with Pokemon cards. Forget about even the game. I'm just talking about like kids filling binder pages, kids collecting sets, right? That's not really happening with kids in sports cards right now. So do we think that's an issue or not? Because right now Fanatics is making a very expensive bet that it won't surface as a problem down the line.
I don't know if it's an issue per se. I don't think the fact that Pokemon is appealing to a collector's side than sports cards is a big deal. Because I do think it's going to translate. But Pokemon's designed to be that way, while sports cards just aren't nowadays. And that's okay. It's more for now. It's like more for team collectors, player collectors, and then investors. Is kind of the way I view sports cards right now, personally.
Yeah, so it's like more of a mainstream hobby. Like you don't need to be money driven, money hungry, entrepreneurial to want to get into Pokemon cards as a kid. You can have that attitude and you can have those goals and you can still do Pokemon cards, sealed perspective or single cards. But there's other ways that you can engage, in a more friendly way if you're not into the dollars and cents, right?
Pokemon's doing good with like the Pokemon Ty plays this, the pocket game. They get you free packs. They do good with Pokemon Go. They do good with the video games. All that ties into the card. Like when you go down this rabbit hole, it's like, Pokemon cards make way too much sense. We should be buying those. But at the same time, that will translate to, I believe, sports card collectors once they hit a certain age. So I think that's a benefit. It's kind of like the minor leagues in a way for a lot of collectors.
Yeah, I saw there were a lot of kids that at the West Coast Card Show that were dealing in cards and in Pokemon. And it seems like I don't know the values Pokemon, so it's hard for me to compare, but it seemed like just judging from the sports cards these kids have, they also had some pretty valuable and desired Pokemon cards. Ty said something earlier too, that if he grew up as a kid now, he knows that he would do this. And I've been thinking about that. And as a kid, I had a shoebox of marbles that I would bring to school that I would sell for like 5 cents or 10 cents or 25 cents and go around and sell my marbles. And it was really cool. It felt like I had my own little business. And then the principal shut it down, sadly. But
I sold dogs.
Yeah. So I feel like, this would have been a natural progression for me to do something like that now too. So,
but I will say, I think Ty also hit something earlier in the show. We all would have been focusing on values. I think we all were in some way focusing on values when we were kids. It's just the human nature. We're taught that way. We were taught that way in the 90s. Or else there would have been a Beckett magazine. That's when all of the vintage was blowing up. Like, it's not like people will say, well, it's just too value focused. Like, it's always kind of been that way.
Yeah, my Mike Greenwell
order box is hoping you find a 50-cent card.
Yeah.
Another reason why it's probably so male dominated is because of, not to make generalizations, but not all mindsets are created equally. So,
speaking of which, what percentage of our audience is female? I bet you it's about 5%, and we appreciate you 5% very, very much. Let me pull
less
it
than
up.
1%, I bet.
Yeah, is it less than 1%? I'm saying 5%.
That's good for you. If your personal channel gets close to 5%, Scott. Mine never did.
It's impressive.
Oh, really? My channel sits around 4 or 5. Okay, let's go to audience.
It's because of intangibles.
And buttons.
Yeah, I think so.
It's because of the dog. Yeah, 2.1% female, and we appreciate you 2.1%.
Yeah.
So, isn't that crazy though? We had on some videos 20,000 views, and only 2% aren't dudes. So, I don't know, man. It's a male-dominated hobby for sure.
That's true. Okay,
what else do we want to talk about? Do we feel like this is covered pretty well, or do we want to talk about a couple more topics? Maybe we talk about what we can do next to make the hobby better for kids. Okay, we talked about where we're at. How can we improve the hobby for kids? What can we proactively do as participants? Is there anything we can do, or is it kind of up to Fanatics and not us?
Well,
Ty, I'll go to you first because you work at Cards HQ.
Yeah, I the cool part of the video I did at Culture Collision was that I basically was talking to dealers about why they think people should go to card shows, and then I bought some cards from the dealers, and then I went and talked to kids about why they like card shows, and then surprised them by giving them some cards, which was really cool. I think the generosity aspect is good. I would caution against entitlement. Like there's a way to read that, or just, I don't know. Some kids are more appreciative than others, and maybe have a harder time getting nicer cards or whatever. But just one thing I really like that my boss does, for as much crap as people give him, is like when he does the trade stuff at Cards HQ or at the National or whatever, like he's almost always like giving some extra back to the kids that he's trading with. So like he's got the cards, and maybe it's like, $100 trade value total on both sides, and so he's getting $80 back from the kid and giving him 110. Like if you can afford to do, just like working through the process, really making them talk through it, think through it, pushing back a little, like whatever, and then maybe surprising them. So generosity is good, but I don't think it needs to be like a given. And other than that, I think actually the most important thing is trying to help kids make sure to cultivate a love of collecting. Like that is to me the most, like there's nothing wrong with the financial aspect of it. That's my opinion. I know some people disagree, but I feel very strongly there's all the reasons Phil pointed to and then some come into play with that side of it. But like we want people to stay. We want people to want to have a collection, like look behind me, like you want to have those things. And so just explaining to them like why cards are cool, helping them identify their collector identity, and celebrating those types of things is like, if you have kids and they have like a mail day, or they helped save up for a card that they bought online, like celebrate that moment when it comes in the mail. Look at you got your card, like that's so cool. Let's go get a stand and put it in your room, or take good care of it, or whatever the thing might be. That to me is like number one.
Okay, good call. It's Phil, Jeff. You guys have any other thoughts?
I think a lot of these kids I could probably learn more from than they could learn from me, because most of the ones that I am interfacing with are not true collector types. Like we've got a lot of those types that watch our videos in the comments, that watch Blabbing About Slabbing as well. Maybe a few even that watch Scotty B and Market Movers channels. It's funny. There was a guy that approached me when I was setting up in Woburn a long time back, and he knew I had a YouTube channel, and he was like, hey, I actually just he was a 5th grade teacher, something like that, around that age. It's like, oh, I just taught my kids all about sports cards, and they're really into it. And anyway, you would want to go and maybe talk about cards. I'm like, oh, didn't you already do that? And he's like, well, they want to understand the finance part of it. They want to understand the money aspect of cards. They're actually more interested in that. To Scott's point, like when we were younger, that was like a driving factor for us too. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I guess that's something. He never connected with me again, but I guess that's something that I could do to give back, to help educate these kids. Some of the kids are also still in the phase where they're still opening wax, or they're really tempted by opening wax. I mean, you're a kid. Your brain's not even fully developed. Of course you want to open wax.
I'm still tempted.
Yeah, exactly. So again, since most of these kids are not collectors that I've talked to, and they're money oriented, I try to let them know. They ask me, they're confused at why I don't open a lot of wax. I'm like, well, it really eats into your margins, since it's mostly a business for these kids if they don't call it that yet. I mean, they don't have an LLC yet. Most of these kids don't. They don't need one to do business either, but it's a separate issue. But don't go crazy with wax. Open it in moderation, enjoy it, but over time, try to open less and less and less. Unfortunately, that's just the prudent way to approach things these days. And I don't think any of our viewers would really disagree with me there.
Yeah, I just would add specifically on that. That's something I'm working with my kids too. Also appreciating the cards, because sometimes when you open wax, like, and I've done this too, you just go through it quick and look for any good hits. So my son has binders, and collects different things. He's got like an insert portion and a parallel portion. So even if it's a player he doesn't like, but it's that he doesn't know, if it's a parallel, it's still he'll put it in the binder. And then there's something about being able to see the cards and appreciate them a little more. So I think there's that aspect of it. And then just like you guys have said, the more that you can communicate with them why you do things the way you do, that I don't open boxes too much anymore because I'd rather use that to get a card I really like. I think that can help as well.
Yeah. With that being said, let us know in the comments down below what your thoughts are around how youth participation is in the baseball card hobby in particular, what we can do to improve it, and we will see you in the next video.